Hey, what up YouTube? Welcome back to a new video with Rams fan YT. In today's video, the clue is in the description and in the title that I will be looking at clubs who have entered administration. This goes all the way back to the 1980s. Otherwise, if I went any further back, this video could be in 20 parts and we would never be finished. And before people say, oh, you're only making this because of Derby County administration, well, that is actually, in fact, probably where my influence probably did lie. But my heart goes out to all clubs who have ever suffered this dreadful fate, and especially to those which liquidated and are no longer in business. I mean, you're just looking at Wimbledon, who very successful club at the time, and the old Maidstone United and Bury, of course. This is part one, which will be during 1980s to basically the turn of the modern century. 1983, Bradford City. Under chairman Bob Martin, the club went into receivership with a Save Bradford City Fund being launched this is in 1983. With the City Fund being launched on the 24th of July of that year. Former chairman Stafford Higginbotham and former board member Jack Tordoff bought the club. Charlton Athletic in 1984. Caused by reduced supporters due to relegation to the third division, new owners then came in and sacked the popular manager, who had been promoted back to the second division. They also wasted money on reckless signings like European Football of the Year Alan Simonson, which made the club go into administration in 1984. But they were reformed as Charlton Athletic 1984 Limited. But they did have to leave the valley due to not conforming to safety standards. Middlesbrough 1986. During the mid-1980s, they slid down the table rapidly. In April 1986, the club had to borrow £30,000 from the PFA to pay players' wages. The final game of the season led to Middlesbrough being relegated to the third division. That summer, a liquidator was called in. Shortly afterwards, the club was wound up and the gates to Ayresome Park were padlocked. Without the £350,000 capital required for Football League registration, it seemed inevitable that the club would fold permanently. Steve Gibson, however, a member of the board at the time, brought together a consortium, and with 10 minutes to spare before the deadline, he completed the registration to the Football League for the 1986-87 season. Following the registration came both a change of club crest and change of official company name to Middlesbrough Football and Athletic Club 1986 Limited. And I just want the current owner of Middlesbrough to remember that this happened to you. When you're going after Derby County and you're trying to get them to pay money for compensation for whatever stupid reason they have, just think you were almost wound up. You were 10 minutes away from no longer being a club. Tranmere Rovers, 1987. Another relegation to Division 4 in 1979 put the club in financial difficulties. Debts mounted throughout the 1980s, with insolvency forestalled through a series of friendly fixtures, contributions from fans, and a £200,000 loan from Wirral Council. This partnership proved to be an enduring one, as Wirral's logo still appeared on the shirts until 2011. In July 1984, the club was sold to a Californian attorney, making Tranmere one of the first English clubs bought by a foreign owner. Nonetheless, in 1987, the club went into administration, with local businessman Peter Johnson taking over control and ownership. Newport County, 1989. Despite reaching the Welsh Cup final, County were relegated from the third division in 1987, and in 1988 finished bottom of the fourth division with a mere 25 points, meaning that their 60-season stay in the Football League was over. They failed to finish their third season of the conference and finally went out of business on the 27th of February 1989, with debts of £330,000. They were expelled from the conference for failing to fulfil their fixtures. Their record was 4 wins, 7 draws and 19 points from 29 games, but that was expunged. The BBC Wales Current Affairs programme Week In, Week Out broadcast a documentary in 1989 about the winding up of Newport County and its controversial owner at the time, American Jerry Sherman. Heavily advise you to go and watch that out. You can probably find it on YouTube somewhere. In June 1989, the club was reformed by 400 supporters, including David Hando as chairman, later the club president. Former manager John Relish was reappointed team manager, and they were elected to the Hellenic League, then 4 divisions below the Football League. The club's main aim was to regain the Football League status lost in 1988. The club took on the name Newport AFC and adopted the nickname the Exiles as a result of having to play home matches for the 1989-90 season at the London Road ground in North Gloucestershire town of Moreton in Marsh, or on the Marsh or something like that, I think it is. 80 miles, 130 kilometres north-east of Newport. Newport Council considered the new company to be a continuation of the old and refused it permission to use Somerton Park on the grounds of unpaid rent, you see. Walsall in 1990. The 1988-89 season saw the club immediately relegated from the second division and Ramsden's business empire collapse. Walsall were minutes from going out of business but survived again through the actions of supporters and local businessmen as they had entered administration before the time zone of this episode or series. Northampton Town, 1992. They were top of the table of the 4th Division in February, but fell away and finished mid-table. Things then got even worse, and the club went into administration in April 1992, with debts of around £1.6 million. 10 players were sacked, and youth players were drafted in to make up the numbers. Results did not improve, and these events sparked the formation of the Northampton Town Supporters Trust, which is a shareholding in the club and a representative on the board of directors. This was actually the first such instance of a supporters trust taking over a football club, a move which I heavily champion, although I don't think it will be feasible with Derby County at the moment. Aldershot, 1992. A disastrous season in 1988-89 saw Aldershot go down in bottom place, with just 8 wins and 37 points all season, placing them 17 points adrift of safety. By this stage, the financial crisis was dawning upon the club, as debts were mounting, and as the 1989-90 season began, the task at Aldershot was to avoid being relegated or expelled from the Football League, rather than mounting a promotion challenge. Aldershot finished 22nd in the 4th Division that season, and were in danger of a second successive relegation right up to the end of April. However, the financial crisis was worsening, and it seemed doubtful that Aldershot would be able to start the 1990-91 season. On the 31st of July 1990, Aldershot were wound up in the High Court as the official receiver condemned them as hopelessly insolvent, with debts of £495,000. However, the winding up order was lifted on the 7th of August 1990, when 19-year-old property developer Spencer Treffery paid £200,000 to save the club and allow them to start the new 4th Division campaign. It soon emerged, though, that Treffery did not have the funds to keep the club running, and he was dismissed from the board on the 1st of November 1990. Treffery's shady dealings finally caught up with him in 1994, when he was convicted of fraud and received a 2-year prison sentence. Aldershot's problems continued as they finished the 1990-91 season second from bottom in the league. They had taken in 3 new players near the end of the season in the form of Roger Davis, Dion Smith and Steve Battler. These changes came too late in the season to save the Shots from another low finish. There's no relegation this season due to an expansion in the league's size to 93 clubs to the previous total of 92. Len Walker had stepped up to the role of general manager in March 1991, with Brian Talbot taking over as player manager. However, Aldershot's debts were mounting, and although they were able to begin the 1991-92 Fourth Division campaign, as the season wore on, it looked more and more likely that the club would go under. As well as that, the problems were showing on the field, as Aldershot struggled near the foot of the league. Manager Brian Talbot resigned in November 1991 to be succeeded by Ian MacDonald. On the 25th of March, 1992, Aldershot Football Club finally went out of business and were obliged to resign from the Football League. The final game was a 2-0 defeat against Cardiff City at Ninian Park on the 20th of March. The last home game was a 3-0 defeat to Lincoln City, also in the league, on the 14th of March. Aldershot's final 8 games all ended in defeat, and they had not won any of their final 16 games. Their last competitive win was on the 28th of December 1991, away to Maidstone United in the 4th Division. Ironically, Maidstone also went out of business and had to leave the Football League just 5 months after Aldershot's demise. Aldershot's league record for the 1991-92 season, which had them play 36 games, was expunged. In response to the bankruptcy of a group of players set up a new club, Aldershot Town, which started in the Isthmian League Division 3, 5 levels below the division in which Aldershot had been playing. Maidstone United, 1992. By 1990, the club was lurching into serious financial problems. It had spent large sums getting into the Football League, and the outlay continued after the promotion. Running costs were unsustainable, and attendances were failing as a result of Maidstone's disappointing form in the 1990-91 season and the onset of a recession. The club's finances spiralled out of control, with large debts being run up. The club then took a massive gamble, and without any planning permission, purchased a piece of land east of Maidstone for £400,000 with a view to building a new stadium on it. By being able to return to Maidstone, the club believed it would be able to afford to continue in the Football League. However, the gamble did not pay off, and the club's planning permission to build on the land was turned down by the council. The entire squad of players was put up for sale to raise cash in an attempt to save the club. During the 1990-91-92 season, the club itself was put on the market. With huge debts, no ground and a poor team, there was very little interest. Although a consortium from the North East wanted to buy the club, move it to Tyneside and merge it with Newcastle Blue Star FC. On the football side, Graham Carr was sacked after a poor run of results at the start of the 1991-92 season, and Bill Williams had little success in trying to improve Maidstone's results when he returned for another spell as manager, standing down after just 4 months. His assistant Clive Walker took over and managed to keep the Stones off the foot of the table. Walker's managerial skills, combined with the efforts of a few capable players left at the club, notably young Gary Breen, goalkeeper Ian Hesford, defender Bradley Sanderman, and winger Libert Henry, saw them through. Although debts remained huge and the threat of being forced out of the Football League remained. There was no threat of relegation in 1992, as the Football League was taking an additional member that season. Maidstone finished 18th of 22 clubs in the 4th Division. After the 23rd club, Aldershot had been declared bankrupt and forced to resign from the league on the 25th of March 1992 after playing 36 games, results of which were declared void. The Stones would be founder members of a new Division 3, but as the new season came closer, it looked more and more unlikely that the Stones would be able to play in it, as their financial worries showed no signs of easing and debts reaching £650,000, despite hundreds of thousands of pounds having recently been raised by the sale of players, including Warren Barton, Mark Gall and Steve Butler. They were due to play their first game of the season away to Scunthorpe United on the 15th of August 1992, but by this stage only 2 players, the defender Gary Stebbing and the striker Glenn Donegal, were still registered to the club, and the Watling Street Stadium had been sold the previous month, leaving Maidstone without a home and not knowing where they'd be playing their home games if they remained in existence. As a result, the match was cancelled. A plan to relocate the club to the northeast of England and merge with Newcastle Blue Star was rejected by the Football League, which ruled that the club had to remain in the county of Kent. After their opening game of the season was cancelled, Maidstone United was given until the following Monday to guarantee that it would be able to fulfil its fixtures. Unable to come up with the necessary backing, it resigned from the league on the 17th of August and went into liquidation. The final competitive game that the club played had been at Doncaster Rovers on the 2nd of May 1992, the final day of the 4th Division. The game ended in a 3-0 defeat for the Kent side. It was 27 years until another club was forced out of the Football League due to bankruptcy. This was Bury FC in August 2019. The void left by the club in the town of Maidstone was filled by the new Maidstone United, who were known as Maidstone Invicta until 1994. Hartlepool United, 1994. It was revealed in the new year of 1993 that the club were in financial difficulties. To make ends meet, a number of players were released or sold, and the club set an unenviable record by going 1,227 minutes without scoring. The following season was an unmitigated disaster. With no money to bring in players, the team struggled all season. Busby was replaced in November 1993 by John McPhail, but he could do little, as his name suggests, as the team remained in the relegation places from November until the end of the season. Relegation was assured following a 7-0 defeat at Rotherham United. The next 5 seasons saw constant struggle and a succession of managers. Gibson finally sold the club to local businessman Harold Hornsey, who at least was able to financially stabilise the club, but with little money available for players, times were hard. Barnet, 1994. The 1992-93 season saw controversy at Underhill, as Barnet chairman Stan Flashman regarding club accounts and players' wages, resulting in some nationwide backpage headlines. Flashman also brought his son Mark to the club as a reserve goalkeeper. In spite of the financial problems, Barnet finished third in the new Division 3 and secured the final automatic promotion spot. Manager Barry Fry, however, left Barnet with a handful of games remaining, as replaced by his assistant Edwin Stein, who himself then left to join Fry in the summer at Southend United. Goalkeeper Gary Phillips took over as manager during a difficult summer in which Barnet marginally survived a vote of expulsion by a Football League EGM and lost the vast majority of their promotion-winning side in a tribunal which nullified the players' contracts. Phillips cobbled together a squad from a few remaining players and 3 transfers. Exeter City, 1994. Exeter were relegated in the 1993-94 season. Back in the bottom division, City struggled for nearly a decade, with chairman Ivor Dobble taking the club into administration and starting a chain of events that resulted in the sale of the club's ground. In November 1994, the club almost went out of business and sold its stadium to Beazer Homes for a sum of £650,000, but were able to stay there after the local council took it over. After nearly 2 years on the brink of closure, the club came out of administration on the 1st of August 1996. Although the problems on the field were far from over, as at the end of the season, they were relegated to the Conference National. Gillingham, 1995. Beset with financial problems, the club went into administration in January 1995, and by the end of the 1994-95 season, faced the threat of being expelled from the Football League and closed down. In June 1995, however, a London-based businessman, Paul Scally, stepped in and bought the club. Doncaster Rovers, 1997. During the early 1990s, Ken Richardson, who was later described by detectives as the type that would trample a 2-year-old child to pick up a 2p bit, took over as the majority shareholder of the club. He ploughed a lot of money into the Doncaster Rovers club, with one thing on his mind: a new stadium. When he was refused a new stadium by the council, he soon lost interest. Richardson hired 3 men to torch Bellevue and planned to sell the ground to developers. The attempt to put Richardson in jail for 4 years ruined Bellevue, and Rovers were edging closer to relegation. In 1998, Rovers dropped out of the league with a minus 83 goal difference. He withdrew his financial backing, and as a result, the club was subject to an administration order. The better players left to ease some of the financial burden, but unfortunately the players who were left at Rovers were just not up to the task. The fans blamed Richardson for effectively destroying Rovers, and even a funeral was held at Bellevue on the last game of the 1997-98 season, complete with a coffin along Carhouse Road. Just weeks after Rovers were relegated, Richardson was found guilty of trying to set fire to the Rovers ground, apparently hoping to pay off the club's debts with the insurance money. Millwall, 1997. Jimmy Nicol came in as manager, but couldn't reverse the slump in form, which saw Millwall relegated at the end of the 1995-96 season in 22nd place. Just 5 months earlier, they had been top of Division 1, but now Millwall found themselves in the 3rd tier for the 1996-97 season. The club experienced severe financial difficulties, but resulted in them being placed in financial administration for a short time. Nicol was relieved of his duties, and John Docherty returned on a short-term basis to stabilise the club. Millwall came out of administration, and new chairman Theo Paphitis appointed ex-West Ham United manager Billy Bonds as manager. Bournemouth, 1997. The Inland Revenue owed £350,000 and was petitioning for winding up, and discussions were going on with the Football League about rescue packages. 3 of the 7-member boards were resigned in January. On the 7th of January, administrators started running the club. Lloyds Bank was owed £2.1 million, and the club's account was soon frozen. There were calls for the fans to attend the match to save the club against Bristol City to try and raise £300,000. The club's debts were now reported to be in the total of £4.5 million. 12 staff, including assistant manager John Williams, had been made redundant. A meeting was arranged at the Winter Gardens Concert Hall the next day, and acting chairman Brian Willis said the club would be finished unless the Fighting Fund could raise £300,000. The meeting there raised £35,000. For that June, the club made history when Trevor Watkins led a successful bid to take it out of administration and turn it into Europe's first community club. Crystal Palace, 1998. Palace went into administration in 1999 when owner Mark Goldberg was unable to sustain his financial backing of the club. Venables left and Steve Coppell took over again as manager. The club emerged from administration under the ownership of Simon Jordan, and Coppell was replaced as manager by Alan Smith for a second time. Chester City, 1998. Under owner Mark Gutterman, Chester entered administration in October 1998. The club consolidated their position in the 3rd division under Kevin Ratcliffe in 1998-99 and were brought by the American Terry Smith in July 1999. Portsmouth, 1998. The Fratton end of the stadium cost £2.2 million to be constructed. With 1 minute before the deadline for it to be opened, Portsmouth's centenary season of 1998-99 saw a financial crisis hit the club. And in December 1998, Portsmouth went into financial administration. Serbian-born US businessman Milan Mandaric saved the club with a takeover deal in May 1999, and the new chairman immediately started investing for the new 1999-2000 season. Hull City 2001. In 1997, the club was purchased by former tennis player David Lloyd, who sacked Dolan as manager and replaced him with Mark Hateley after Hull could only finish in 17th place in the table. Hull's league form was steadily deteriorating to the point that relegation to the Football Conference was looking at a real possibility. Lloyd sold the club in November 1998 to a South Yorkshire-based consortium, but retained ownership of Booth Ferry Park. Despite briefly being locked out of Booth Ferry Park by bailiffs, and facing the possibility of liquidation, Hull qualified for the third division playoffs in the 2000-2001 season, losing in the semi-finals to Leyton Orient. A boardroom takeover by former Leeds United commercial director Adam Pearson had eased the club's precarious financial situation, and all fears of closure were banished. Queen's Park Rangers 2001. QPR became embroiled in financial and boardroom controversy. Although the club had floated on the alternative investment market in 1991, in 2001 it entered administration or receivership. A period of financial hardship followed, and the club left administration after receiving a £10 million high-interest emergency loan, which continued to burden the club. And my final one for this part would be Bury 2002. Although this is shaded by the later Bury absolutely getting kicked out of the league and absolutely awful scenes which we all saw. But in 2001-2, financial problems were caused by the collapse of ITV Digital, which we'll probably find out a lot more about in the next episode. So tune in next week on Friday for that. But this brought the club into administration and to the brink of folding. A supporters campaign raised enough money to keep the club afloat, and in recognition of his role within that process, UEFA presented club press officer Gordon Sawfleet with their Best Supporter Award for 2001-2. Bury were relegated to 4th tier Division 3 at the end of that season. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you're new around here. I am making a lot of content coming up. There's so much. I'm going to go to the Coventry City versus Derby County game, where I'm going to be recording a video from that and then editing it and uploading it later. I'm going to be going to the Derby County Stadium, making a video outside of there, running there and back, and hopefully being able to record some stuff. I'm going to then make a history of Fleetwood Town on Monday. All sorts of stuff. So you really do need to be subscribed. But goodbye for now.